Hey guys, John here from CONTRABIM, and we are back with a follow-up video to our last video on how to use the curtain wall tool for modeling concrete block work. If you did not see the last video, then go check that one out. We kind of talk about some of the basics for how to just kind of model different blocks, how to create different patterns for like a running bond. We talked about some custom curtain wall panels that can be used for creating different shapes. And in this video, we're going to take that one step further and talk more about how to create those custom panels and how you can start creating more shadow block. And we'll also talk about how to fill in the mortar lines here, as you can see here, with using a specific frame setting. We'll also talk a little bit about just how to build up these blocks and the profiles. So we'll cover quite a bit in this one, but let's go ahead and jump right into it and walk through the workflow. So in the past on this previous block wall that you can see here, I'd done this in a little different method than what we're going to be showing today. Essentially what I'd done is I drew a morph kind of upright, and then I saved that off as a custom panel. And when you save them, you'll see as we go through this workflow today, how you have the different option of either choosing the horizontal plane or your current working plane. So to take this one step further here today, we're actually going to be starting with some slabs that I've modeled up. And you can see down here, I have a little bit of a rig that I've set up. In Archicad, we have these 2D objects that are kind of like a 2D symbol. So there is no 3D aspect to this. These are just 2D symbols. So I'm using that as kind of like a base background to build off of. So from there, I created some different line work for the different shapes that I wanted. Quick note, when creating these types of panels, it is good to kind of limit the radiuses on these. Like if we stuck with this pure radius, then we could end up with just way too many polygon counts later on. So I did break this up just a little bit so that we only have 3 on that radius and 2 over on this one. It looks about the same when you look at it in plan view here. Okay, so from there, I essentially just saved these off as some slabs, as you can see in this case. So there we go. We just have our 2 different blocks. One is kind of like our default 8x8x16 block, and we have one that's just a single cell 8x8x8. And so the next step from here is, if we want to start creating some more interest to these blocks and creating some of those shadow shapes, then it's really easy to do so just by working with these and converting these to morphs and kind of building on top of these faces here. So these are actually still slabs as of the moment, but we can just take these here and we're going to convert this to a morph. And then we can start working with this. So let's go ahead. I'm going to pull this up here. And okay, so let's kind of figure out now the shape that we want. I do have a reference here that I found. This is from desertblock.com. They have this nice little PDF on their website for different shadow block shapes. So you can find a lot of different references out there that will show you different sizing. And then you can build these to the exact specifications and size. And so you can see here that we have a lot of some different configurations. In this particular case, I would just probably model that with a slab vertically, not even convert it to a morph, and just create a little bit of a wave texture there. So that would be an easy one. This one, it looks a little bit more complicated, a little bit tough to understand how that's coming through, but let's go through and pick out one that's going to look good. I actually kind of like this one, the Spade Block. It's just got a little bit of an angled face. Notice the dimensions here are including that 3/8 inch mortar gap. So I think this one would actually be a nice one to start with. It's nice and clean. And you know what? We don't even need to go to a morph in this case. So what I think I'll do is I'm going to take this slab here and I'm just going to copy it over, and I'm going to just give it that little bit of a gap that we were using. And so to kind of point out how we're going to set this up, so we want it 2.5 inches. We're going to extend it 1 inch, and then we'll just angle it. So Okay, so from here, what I'm going to do is let's just measure over 2.5 inches. And then from here, we're going to give it a point. And I'm just going to double check there to make sure that that's exactly what I wanted. So yes, it is. And all right, so from here, let's bump this out 1 inch. And then we're simply going to extend this one to meet it. And okay, so there we go. That would be a quick modification to create that type of spade block that we're just looking at. And so this next step here is really kind of a crucial one for being able to save this out and have this in the right plane here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my editing plane here, and let's just go ahead and we're just going to reset our plane. And so it's important when we're saving this that we set the back face of this as our editing plane, is what I found works the best. So I find the easiest thing to do is just to pick the plane, and then we just click on the back of that block, and then now you can see that our editing plane is on the back. And from here, I always like switching over so that we're in an axo view, and then I like clicking on a surface that I'm looking perpendicular to, and in this case I know that this face is perpendicular. I wouldn't want to do it on this one because it might rotate it a little bit. I don't know if that really matters at the end of the day here when we save this out, because it's based on our editing plane, but we'll see. So let's go ahead and we'll select that block now. We are going to go to Libraries and Objects, Save Selection As, and then we're going to save this as a curtain wall panel. And okay, so now it's asking us, the new curtain wall panel will be rotated to fit the custom component reference plane. In your model, which plane is parallel to this plane? Well, it's our current editing plane is going to be parallel with our curtain wall reference plane. If we use the horizontal plane, then it would actually rotate all these blocks and it wouldn't necessarily fit in there correctly for us. So that's why we need to go through and set up our current editing plane, because that's something that we can just set to the back of the block and make it really easy to align. So let's go ahead and continue and save. I'm going to call this CMU Spade 8x8x16. Okay, so we're going to save that off. All right. And okay, so now that we've done that, we can go and we can just pick up some settings of a block wall. In this case, we can just pick up this block wall right there, and let's just model a segment in. We'll go maybe like, I don't know, 8 feet. So we can see how that's actually being set up right now. Let's take a look at these settings real quick here in 3D. I was going to talk a little bit about how we added some of these grout lines. You can see right now that we are referencing in the old type of block here, kind of the standard block. But let's talk a little bit about some of those, the different settings that we have here. So for one, in our scheme settings here, this is really the same running bond scheme that we had set up before. We have this set 8x8x8x8. And you can see that right now these are set just to our block 8, like our standard block in this case. But what we can do now is we can go into our panels here, and we can create a new block, or we can even just override one of our others. But let's just take this shadow triangle block and let's create a new one. We can duplicate this, and we're just going to call this a shadow spade block. Okay, so 7 5/8 is going to be our panel clamp thickness, but we know that we extended out that one edge an additional inch, so I'm going to set the overall panel thickness to 8 5/8. And then let's just go in and let's find our spade block. So as soon as we save it, it'll be loaded up here. We can see that it gets stretched out a little bit in the preview. I'm not sure how we can reset that, but that should still be okay. We have the correct sizing here, so that will all be fine. And so now that we've done that, we've set up this new spade block. We can go into our scheme, and we can just hold down we hold down Shift, and we can select all of these here. I'm going to select all of them, including the ones that are a little bit smaller. We'll just assign this as our shadow spade block. And then let's go ahead and load this through. So, okay, there we go. We can see that it is coming through here, but we do have some things that we want to adjust. Okay, so one of the things that we can notice here is, for one, it seems like everything is kind of flipped around. So I think what we'll want to do is, well, we need to do a few things. We either need to just adjust our offset on our mortar so that that is being pushed back a bit, or we can also flip around our block. So it seems like our block is maybe not exactly how we intended it to come through, but let's go here. We can flip our panel and let's see what that gives us when we just do that quick panel switch. So what's interesting is now it seems like we're actually in much better alignment here with our grout lines. We can actually flip the entire orientation of it now and flip it over here. And so this actually looks pretty good as of the moment. So we can see our grout lines are actually matching all the way back to that point, which I think is probably where we want it to go. I don't think we want it to actually be coming out and going in and out with this. I think we want it to be set back. And let's take a quick look here at the actual mortar gap that we have created here. So in our frame settings, we have one called a mortar gap. And what I've found is the best frame to use on this is actually going to be the modular frame. I was having some struggles getting the built-in butt glaze or the built-in frame to actually create this sort of offset. But with this modular frame and just setting our width and our overall depth to the size of the mortar that we want, and then setting our offset to the center line, which is in this case about this is like essentially half of our overall grout width. This lines it up pretty much perfectly for us here. And then I've noticed giving it a little bit of a panel inset here keeps it from overlapping. You'll see right here there's a little bit of an overlap there. So just having it at 3/16 inch seem to kind of clean that up for us. So that's how we're creating that mortar gap. Pretty simple. It's just trying to fit a frame in there that's going to cover it from one side to the other. And so yeah, that's essentially how we go through it and create these frames. What's actually interesting with this is it actually looks pretty good with this pattern, but you will notice that these blocks right here have a slightly different shape to them because it's actually going through and just stretching those. So if we actually if we take a look at it, where can we do this? We take a look at it. If we just shrink this down one, you can actually see that it took that panel and it shrinked it up a little bit. So if we wanted to go through and override those, we could certainly go in and assign these to some different block types. And so if we wanted to switch those out and just turn them back to normal, that's how we would achieve that. And that can clean up some of these corner conditions just a little bit, because you don't really lose the pattern at all in that case. And by doing this, it actually keeps our the cavities all in alignment as well. So if we go to like a wireframe type view, you should be able to see right down that cavity there. So there you go. So yeah, that looks pretty good. You can definitely see that there's kind of a lot going on here in wireframe, but imagine how much more complicated it would look if instead of having, just 2 points here, having about, I think, 6 or 8 of them. So overall, it looks pretty good. And from here, it's just easy to kind of duplicate and continue with. So let's do one more variation on this. You can actually notice here, look how nice and clean that looks in in our settings there. If we actually go in and modify our panel there that we created for our spade block, right now you can see it was set to like a concrete material here. And we can actually go in and switch this over to our masonry, concrete unit masonry, and that's going to give it this nice kind of hatched fill, still while maintaining our cavities in those sections. We could go through and turn this to be just a little bit more simplistic if we wanted to by changing our settings here. If we did this like a projected with overhead, you can actually see that we get a little bit of that overhead coming through. And if we changed it from projected to like symbolic, I think that actually switches out and cuts that out for us. So lots of different options here for how to view these, which is nice. I actually like just going with a straight up cut just because I think it looks nice and clean. But yeah, there's some nice options there for the visualization in 2D as well. Okay, let's do one more quick variation on this. In this case, let's use our morph that we had set up, and let's go pick another type of block here. So let's do one that's maybe a little bit more complicated. I actually like this one. This is one that's very, very similar to what we had done before. I think this one here is actually going to be kind of interesting. So let's take this one and try this, what they're calling a pure shadow block. Let's give this one a shot. We'll see if I can get my morph modeling skills working for me. Okay, so let's shrink this down just a little bit. And okay, so we're obviously going to be modeling this on the face of this particular block. And in this case, it looks like I want to offset it about 2¼ inches. So I think, I'm just trying to think what the easiest way to model this in. I'm thinking if I draw a line right across it here, and then take that line and extend it up to the middle, then offset that bottom and connect it, that will hopefully be the easiest way. But this may take a little trial and error, so I'm actually going to take this, we'll copy it off to the side, and we'll start with this one here. So okay, so 2¼ and then from there we'll extend out that bottom. But let's see if we can get this going. So okay, doesn't really matter what side we are working with at the moment. Looks like this is the face that we wanted. So okay, so we can take this bottom line here, and I'm actually going to take it and I'm going to make a copy going 2.25 inches. And from here, I'm going to, let's actually see if we can add a point right in the middle. So we're creating a point, and then I want to take that point and I'm going to move it, hopefully to get it to stick right up there in the middle. Okay. And okay, so from here, let's try this. I want to create a line directly from here. Going to be drawing on this with a single line, and we're going to come down and try to connect it here, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. And then I'm hoping if we take this bottom line, I'm hoping this is going to work for us. I'm not 100% sure. Ooh, I think that is going to work. So we're going to offset this 1 inch, and okay, I think that is what we wanted to do. Kind of a specific order of operations there, but let's double check. We offset it 1 inch, 2½ inches up. Yeah, it seemed like that was a pretty easy workflow. I got that on the first try, which I had not practiced before, but yeah, that seemed to work. So great. Let's go ahead. Let's pick our plane. We're going to use our backside again, and now we are going to switch back to AXO. Just kind of best practices here. And then I'm going to click on the face that I know is parallel to the view. We'll select this. We're going to go to our libraries and objects, save selection as a curtain wall panel. We're using our current editing plane. Continue and save. So in this case, we're going to call this is our shadow 8 by 8 by 16. Hit save on that. Okay. And all right. So let's go back to our home story here, or to our settings. We can actually just take this same section here. I'm going to create a copy. We're going to jump into our 3D view. Go into our settings here. We can create just one more panel class here. We're going to call this a shadow 8 by 8 by 16, I guess. I guess I was calling all those shadows. This is a shadow triangle. Okay, we'll just leave it as that. We had two different triangles there. But now we'll go in. We're going to find it from our list. Shadow. Where is it? Shadow triangle. Shadow 8 by 8 by 6. Okay, that's the one. We can kind of flip it around and see the front of it. So yeah, we extended it out 1 inch, so all these settings should work just fine for us. And yeah, last thing we got to do is just go to our scheme. We are going to select all of these, and we're just going to switch it out. So shadow triangle 8 by 8 by 16. There we go. That looks pretty good. So let's do one more variation on this, and it's actually going to be something that simplifies this up for us. So let's go back here. That looks awesome, actually. I really like the look of that block. That looks great. So we got some options. Lots of different options with this now that we have created this. So what I'm going to do is let's just we'll copy one over here. Take it 10 feet over. Let's make some modifications to the scheme. So with this here, we're actually going to get rid of a few of these, and we're going to delete out that mortar gap, and we're going to add in the mortar gap on the edge. So now we essentially have two panels that are going to be stacked. So let's just see how this looks in a stacked orientation. Okay, there we go. You can see that because we had overridden some of those panels on the edge, you'll notice, or one easy way to fix that I've found is, we'll see if it works in this case for us, but if we extend this over and then we pull it back, you can see how it recorrected all those panels for us, which is pretty nice. We can change our length here. I want to get rid of that. You can see that we were actually starting with it on this side, but we can snap that one there, and let's pull it over here. So there's like kind of this setting here. If you extend it beyond and then back, it'll go through and fix those. So okay, so what's our overall length on this? 6'8". Let's just yeah, we can just leave that. I think that works. Looks like we have a little bit of a sliver here. So here in 2D, we can clean that up. Okay, so I want to do one more variation of this, because once you get these blocks going, it seems like it's pretty easy to modify and make some interesting adjustments. So with this now, I want to go through and create a bit of a new rotation on this. So what I'm going to do is we'll go back to our panels, and I'm going to create a new one here. And so let's do this. I'm going to call this version 2. Okay, And so the version 2, we are going to just rotate it 180 degrees. So it's essentially upside down. And if we go back to our scheme, I'm going to call this version 2. And so I just wanted to see how that looks. That looks pretty cool as well. So yeah, just by doing a few adjustments here, we can go through and switch these out. Let's turn on some shadows here. Maybe we have to move our sun around. Send it higher in the sky. So there we go. Several different variations. They all look pretty good. So I'm liking it. Okay, there we go. That is the follow-up that I wanted to do on this topic. We'll probably actually do one more here because I want to come back and talk about how we can start doing takeoffs on all of these to get exact block counts. So we'll come back, do one more video on that subject. And yeah, hopefully this was useful and you can see just kind of how flexible and how many variations you can get going using this method. And yeah, try it out for yourselves, play around with it, and have some fun, because this is starting to get, you know, this is some of the power behind Archicad, is just like creating these nice visuals and doing so in a manner that, you know, not only can we get it looking great, but we can also start really analyzing it and getting some nice 2D representation of the same thing at the same time. So okay, that's it for this one here. We'll wrap this one up here. Let me know if you have any questions, and we'll catch you on another video here very soon, where we'll come back and we'll talk about quantity takeoffs.